السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم فرج الكرب عن المسلمين في كل مكان. May Allah Azza wa Jal alleviate the suffering and the hardship that many of the Muslims around the world are experiencing. May Allah Azza wa Jal allow those people who were murdered in cold blood in New Zealand, allow them to be written with him as martyrs. May Allah Azza wa Jal make it easy on their family. And if anyone knows anyone who's relative to those people who were affected, please let us know if there's any way we can help. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he told us very clearly that when one part of the Muslim Ummah is affected, we should all be affected. And it's not just because this time we got lucky enough that the news and the media made such a big splatter about it. But it's because we should always be affected, regardless if they took this to be the headlines or not. And then that makes us come back and think that there's still a lot more suffering happening. And there's still a lot of people being murdered in cold blood. Maybe it just doesn't make the news. There's a lot of Muslims that are very oppressed in China. There's a lot of Muslims that are very oppressed in Myanmar and a lot of these other places in Palestine. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jal, and in Syria and all these other places that we're not mentioning around the world, Allah knows who they are. And we hope that we do enough and we make enough dua and we never forget them in our prayers, so that when we meet Allah on the Day of Judgment and we're questioned what did we do about A, B, and C, we don't come with anything empty-handed, but rather we come with that we responded in some way, shape, or form. And you look at how this has come about, and this is something if we prepared for it, we would see this coming, and we would see this kind of wave not stopping. And we pray that we don't get affected by it. But the way that you don't get affected by a particular fitna is by learning about that fitna. You see, it's not about just being ignorant to the society around you. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned to us many times about the trials that we're going to face. The question is what did we do about them? What did we do about those trials? Did we just sit there and listen and read and then that's it? Next hadith, we go through these things like nothing. We go through ayah by ayah and we just try to finish the Quran every 30 or 40 days, for those that are even opening it, including the one speaking to. But it's about what action did we implement. Because if you look, there's a lot of things that the Prophet ﷺ warned us about. He said that towards the Day of Judgment, that ignorance will be on the rise. And then he also mentioned to us that towards the Day of Judgment, that there will be so much knowledge spread around the earth. So is this like two different times? Is this at the same time? Rather, a lot of times if you look at our community, and you look at the Muslims in particular, and I can't speak about the entire United States because that would be ignorant, but I could speak about our community in New Jersey. Alhamdulillah, we're a very educated community. You look at the amount of goals that we seek and the higher education that we take. Alhamdulillah, at one point it was the bachelor's that we aimed for, and now everybody's even aiming for higher degrees. Alhamdulillah. That's a blessing. But it could also be a curse in disguise. Because we're starting to learn so much about things that don't help us in the akhirah, but they help us very well in the dunya. And it's a balance, you see. Because the scholars mentioned that when Allah Azza wa Jal revealed the words Iqra to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in this surah, the word Iqra comes twice. And they said the first thing that Allah is telling you to recite and learn about is the ilm that's going to help you in the dunya and the akhirah, which is this religion. And the next is the things that will help you benefit and sustain you in this dunya. So it's not like one or the other. All of the ilm comes back to Allah Azza wa Jal. You attribute all of that to Allah. And then you come back and say, okay, I understand now. So then in the light of this fitna, what's going on? The Prophet ﷺ said towards the end of time, there will be a lot of harj. He said, what is that, Ya Rasulullah? He said, killing. And a lot of killing. And a lot of killing and innocent killing, not just killing. That the people that are being killed, they don't know why they're being killed. They don't understand. Somebody came to pray Friday Jum'ah, and all of a sudden, bullets are flying everywhere. Some people decided to gather in a church, and all of a sudden, they're opened fire too. So it's not like restricted to one particular religion or one particular race. This kind of idea is happening and it's being spread. But if we were smart, you would understand that, interestingly enough, the way that the Prime Minister in New Zealand responded was actually in accordance with Islam. How so? She said something very interesting, which when we studied Tafsir Surah Yasin with the Dr. Yasir Qadi, he explained that when the people came from the furthest part of town, and the messengers came, and the man came rushing, right? You remember this story in Surah Yasin? And then he came to sit there and vouch for them, to say, yes, I'm Muslim, I follow what these messengers are saying. And he takes his shahada in front of everyone. They don't accept that. And he even gives them da'wah, and he says, Ya qawmi. He says, oh my people, listen to what these messengers are saying. And he gives them da'wah, he's speaking to them. He's amongst them. He's living and breathing what they live and breathe. And yet they still kill him. But who, which in this room, has memorized Surah Yasin that could give me the verse where they killed him? There's no verse. There is no verse. Allah skips that part in the Quran. That particular part of the story. And our teacher, Shaykh Yasir Qadi, he mentioned there's a reason that Allah Azza wa Jal skipped it. And the reason is because if you sit there and you talk about these people who commit such horrible crimes on earth, you are going to inspire other people to do the same thing. Because they got this messed up thing in their head to think that, hey, if I want to get famous, all I got to do is splatter a little bit of innocent blood on TV in whatever name, in whatever cause, and I'll get the attention I wanted. And she said something so interesting. She said, today we will not mention his name anywhere. We won't give him that. We won't give him that. We're not going to mention his name. He will not get a single ounce of fame from this sick incident he caused. And that's amazing. I wish that us as Muslims, we understood that this is how you respond in the light of fitna like this. That you don't sit there and start mentioning, oh, who's that Dutch guy who rigged the car, and you read about him and you heard about the shooting, and you don't sit there and mention anybody's name, because it allows people to be inspired. You know how many studies right now are showing that when a school shooting takes place, how many other school shootings similar to it happen just within a short time span, because of how much the media just keeps on replaying the same thing? And this person, and then they bring his background and then his childhood and where something might have went wrong and what happened in high school, and then his soccer coach and what he had to say about him. It's like the guy won a baseball championship or something. They got to know his entire story, where he grew up, what girlfriends he had. They bring everything about him. And that's what you have to avoid. This is when you learn the ilm. And then we come back as Muslims and we say, how do we deal with non-Muslims in explaining them this religion of ours? Because if you look all throughout the Quran, whether it was the Prophet Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, whether it was a righteous woman, whether it was a righteous individual, you find something very similar. That they're all speaking to the people that they're living with. That they're all giving da'wah to them. That they're speaking to them to tell them this is what we believe in. We're no different than you. We both live and breathe in this world, but our belief is what sets us apart. And we hope that you could see the beauty of this religion. We hope that you can understand it so that you can join us. And if you don't, lakum dinukum waliya din, we're still very tolerant with you. We're still going to live amongst you. You're still our neighbors. But unfortunately, you find a little bit of a disconnect there. And it's because of the ignorance. What ignorance? Where are we integrated with the society and the community around us? You know, yesterday when I gave the khutbah at Masjid al-Aman, you're talking a couple hundred non-Muslims came and they attended the khutbah al-Jum'ah, the Friday prayer. Some Christians and some Jewish people. When the thing that happened with when they shot up the church and all that other stuff, how many of us went to stand next to the church and hold a sign to say that you're our neighbor and we stand with you and we will protect you as you protect us? Where's our example that we're willing to do that? Or is it just because it's not the Muslims? We also have this kind of phobia. I don't know where it's stemming from. But alhamdulillah, when Allah Azza wa Jal guided me over 10 years ago, I was very, very intertwined with the non-Muslim community. And then when I came and I saw how isolated our masajid were, when I wanted to learn about the religion, and I find that us Muslims, we take our kids to the private Muslim school, and after the private Muslim school, we bring them to the masjid, And after the masjid, we take them, now we got the community center, right? So we harness them into this bubble that they don't know what on earth is happening outside of the Muslim world. It's as almost we created this little mini country of ours in this, and we carved it out in the state of New Jersey. And then you wonder why these people don't understand what's happening with Muslims. We don't know what you guys are afraid of. I sat on a panel about 2 years ago, and I was asked by the state police to come. They wanted to figure out a way to make themselves more open to the Muslim community, so they feel like we fear them, that we're not really connected with them. And there's some truth to that. Can't lie. So I sat down, and they said, we want to hear your opinion and what you think can solve. First of all, the only reason I attended is because one of my teachers asked me to attend. Otherwise, I firmly believe that it's the more older people who should attend these kind of things because they have a lot of experience with it. Not just somebody who studied Sharia and they come and, hey, fatwa one. This is not how it works. Also, a lot of experience, the human nature, and you interact. You know, yeah, I was born and raised in this state, but ask somebody who's lived in this country longer than I've been born. Just because he came from foreign, he sees what the changes happened from the 70s all the way here to the upper 2000s. But I stayed quiet. But then it hit me like a ton of bricks when there was three Muslim sisters. There was three Muslim sisters, and they were wearing the hijab. And they started speaking. And in the middle of their talk, they started crying. Because they just didn't understand why people are looking at them like that when they're in ShopRite or when they're in the grocery store. And you want me to tell you something? None of you experienced that. Maybe to a certain level, yeah, you got a weird beard, but now it's a thing. Now everybody's got a beard. It's a metro look. Our sisters, we don't know what they go through. We don't know the looks that they get. We don't see it. We don't get those kind of questions. Excuse me, are you hot? It's 100 degrees out there. Of course she's hot. But we don't see that, you see. Maybe, yes, if you wore the thobe and you wore the jilbab, maybe you may get these kind of things. But for the overwhelming majority of us living here, we don't see that. So I stayed quiet. I said, there's nothing I can add to this. That's better than for them to actually speak about what they think would help bring our societies together. When do we sit there and we volunteer with them in the local food bank? But no, you know what we're going to do? We're going to create the Muslim food bank. Why can't a Muslim help with the non-Muslim food bank? It's just something that we have to learn, that we have to adapt. These fitan are not going to stop coming. Umar radiallahu anhu, he asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I ask you about the fitan that come like the waves of the ocean. And if you ever sat on the shore, it's not too far from here. You could sit on the shore and you'll see that the wave, they keep coming. And some of them come very strong, some of them are very violent, and some of them are very unexpected. They wreck ships, for crying out loud. You think the guy who was, the captain who was sailing that ship, if he knew that that kind of wave was coming, he wouldn't have stopped? He didn't see it. He didn't see it coming. That's a lesson for us. These fitan, you might not see them coming, but you got to be prepared for them. If we're gonna survive these fitna, if we're gonna be better off than before the fitna, than after the fitna, then you have to be able to make some changes within what we're doing. We have to start asking ourselves, how can I let my Muslim neighbor know about Islam? How many of us decided to go pray in the backyard just so our Muslim neighbor could see that we pray? Not for any riyad, for a type of da'wah, for crying out loud. But we're nervous. We're nervous. You know how many questions I hear amongst my own teachers? Is it permissible for me to ijma', to combine my dhuhr, asr and maghrib when I get home? Allahu Akbar. Why? What happened? Oh, you know, I know my colleagues and this Islamophobia that they have and this. We should go in the parking lot and pray. Oh, you know, there's a camera. I don't know, they think I'm doing something weird. It's just so interesting how afraid we are of just praying 2 rak'at so innocently. What'd you do? Right? Just something like that. Just these kind of things, these action items that we can do so that they can see how beautiful this religion is. Are we prepared? Or are we embarrassed? You know, that's something we have to ask ourselves. And it takes a level of conviction to get out of that comfort zone. You have to be willing to say, you know, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. You're not doing anything wrong. You're praying to Allah. It's actually the ones who are not praying that are doing something wrong, right? It's something that, wallahi, it motivated me when I heard Sheikh Muhammad al-Sharif say. He said, you know, it's funny. He said, nobody should ever be embarrassed to pray. But obviously, if we study and we're not ignorant, there's certain areas the Prophet ﷺ told us not to pray. Like for example, I saw a man just in the middle of New York City just start praying, in the middle of the sidewalk. The Prophet ﷺ told us don't pray in public pathways. One of the areas now. And I heard non-Muslims cursing him. I heard non-Muslims cursing him. Why? Because they're sitting there, they're tripping, they're moving, and they're afraid. Did I do something wrong? I cut this guy in front of him. They don't want to disrespect him. At the same time, he shrunk an 8-foot sidewalk to 4 feet. And you got one of the busiest sidewalks on earth. But it's out of ignorance. So you see, it's about hikmah and having wisdom in doing what you're doing. But by the way, this thing gets worse. Wallahi, it gets worse. The Prophet ﷺ said, it'll even get worse to the extent that Allah will remove the ilm, the knowledge amongst us Muslims. Over time, He'll continue to remove it. How? With the death of the knowledgeable people around us. And it's very true. We know the local scholars that we have just in our circle here. We can name them. We know them, mashallah. But they're old. They're very old. We reference them. We text them. We email them. We ask them to come here, sit here, and teach us about zakat, teach us about this, teach us about that. What happens when they die?